So, excuse me, a couple things first. We will have a meeting on Thursday. I need to go ahead and put that on. Next week, we will not be meeting. We will have, you'll have due the position paper 4. We're skipping over position paper 3. So on Thursday afternoon, I would like for your groups to finish the position paper, the omni-channel, and turn it in by Thursday afternoon at 11:59 at midnight. I should have your grades for your position papers and for your tests by tomorrow afternoon. So to say that again, we'll have class on Thursday here. Next week, we will not meet in class, but you'll have one assignment. And then after that, I believe we have one more week. And I think it's only on one day. I think it's on the Tuesday, and we will be finishing up the class. Okay. Morning. Okay, so we talked about how we go about doing market segmentation, and we talk about doing it by service inputs. And it's easy to talk about the service inputs, but how do we actually do it? What is the actual practice of it? So the way we do it, the actual way we do it is a 3-step process. And the way we do it is we generate a list. Of our customers. These can be individuals. Usually we can generate these either by explorative interviews. We do this by focus groups. We kind of collect all of these things together. And then what we do is we divide them into segments. We divide them into segments by service output demands. All right. Now, in dividing them by the segments, we look at them based upon their advertising decisions. We look at them in the products that they buy, and we kind of look for their patterns. And when we divide this is the same way of doing market segmentation in consumer research. We try to look at those that are different from each other and common with each other. In other words, we look for groups that are mutually exclusive, not like each other, and collectively exhausted, all of those that are like each other. And so what we try to do is see how all of their service outputs relate to each other. And then the last thing is we name them. And the reason why we name them is we, in essence, give them an individual identity. It makes it easier for us to talk about those groups, to be able to communicate them and align them in our organizations. And we understand them better when we give them some kind of factual existence. Now, when we talk about defining them into segments, doing service outputs, we're not necessarily saying that we're looking for individuals who are doing information search, or we're looking for individuals who need spatial convenience, because the way that we're going to hear that information is we're going to be asking specific questions, and we're going to have to translate what those individuals are asking for into one of the 6 service outputs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have, let's just say, a exact name on what each one of those is. And so when we talk about the dividing them into the segments, basically what we're talking about is we have to spend a little more time describing those segments and recognizing that they don't fit into beautiful lists. So this is the 3-step process in which we go by. So now let me also say this, once again, as we've talked about before, is that price is not part of the market segmentation process in terms of service outputs, and yet there'll be individuals that'll be price sensitive or insensitive, but that still, and that may affect the way that they do channels, but it is not going to be a service output per se. So Albert Carroll is a tailor. This is actually a corporation like my friend. They actually go visit customers and provide them with high quality service in terms of tailoring. But they're very insensitive to price, but it doesn't mean anything when we're talking about market segmentation. All right. Okay. How does this work? Well, this is an example of a table in which we're actually looking at a particular setup that was done, which actually segments the market into 4 different marketing segments. So let's take a look at it. So the first thing to look at when you see things like references and credentials, financial stability and longevity, they're looking at that particular service outputs in terms of information search. Those are things that are considered, important to them. But if you notice, however, is that you're coming up with specifics, but each specific is one of the 6 generalized service outputs. And so what happened was they collected this entire sample, and they were actually able to segment these down into 4 different user groups. Now, one of the things that you do when you're asking somebody what is important is, what is the difficulty of asking someone what service is what service is important to you? Is knowledge, information, search important? Or is price important? Or let's just say, is delivery important? What's the problem with a question like that? Here's one. Who's important to you, your mom or your dad? How do you answer a question like that? And that's one of the difficulties that you have with questions like this, is that they become irrelevant. What this survey uses is what's called a constant sum scale. And you'll see constant sum scales used quite a bit, because what they help you to do is reflect the level of importance of each one of these things. And so what you had is you had a general survey. And in the general survey, what you had is you had a number down here that equaled 100. And it said, based upon these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different items, describe to me which one is more important to you than any others. And that's the advantage of a constant sum scale, is it requires the respondents to come up with a hierarchy. And so this is the hierarchy first. And because they're grouped uniquely, it allows us to have a much better idea of these individual groups and what they represent. Now, if you notice across the bottom here, the percentage of respondents is a constant sum scale as well. So it gives us a great deal of information to look at. So the first group is lowest total cost pre-sales information segment. So even though lowest price is not a service output, we do have to respect that price is one of those things in which we measure. And so in the first group, we look at it and we see lowest price being important. And then we look at the other things. They want to be assistance during the decision process, so they want some form of help. They do want proactive consulting at the beginning. They want to see trials and demonstration. But you look at installation, training, and support is somewhat important, but there's very little idea that they don't want an ongoing relationship with a supplier. They're really not caring about responsiveness after the sale. So the things that kind of speaks to me is that they probably got their own technical department, that they're more concerned about price than anything else. They want to make sure they're making a proper decision at the beginning, but that's all they care about. So the name of that one is lowest total cost pre-sales info segment. So the next one is the most important, is the responsive problem solving after a sale, and installation, training, and support, and an ongoing relationship. Those are the three things that are most important to it. This adds up to me. I'm looking at organizations that don't have a lot of internal support, all right? They need help. Also with this, lowest price means little or nothing to them. They're individuals who want to make sure that they're making the right choice. And so that group is going to be a group that I would expect is going to require a lot of help. Responsive support, post-sale segment. The third group doesn't care about price either, but they're looking for a one-stop solution and they're looking for an ongoing relationship. So what they're looking for an organization that they can call upon time and again for their particular help, and they're going to get it. So one-stop solution, responsive problem solving, ongoing relationship. They're looking for help before and after the sale. Yeah, that's kind of adding up, like they don't really have a big support group either. And the last group, the number one thing for them is their references and credentials and financial stability and longevity and product demonstration. Means that they're everything about what happens before the sale. They don't necessarily care about any help after the sale, not really, a little bit, but what they're wanting to make sure of is that they're making a proper decision before they actually go into it. So, which one of these groups would, so I'll give you another example. Okay, here's a good one. So a full featured group, let's just say a full featured place, like let's say Circuit City, that's how old I am. Best Buy, all right? So a Best Buy, which one of those groups would a Best Buy appeal to more than anything? Or they would appeal to a Best Buy more than anyone else? Who would you think?
Price, or you can exclude that?
Well, that's a pretty good one. If you think about it, lowest price, yeah. Responsiveness during the decision-making process. It depends on how responsive Best Buy would be, okay? And that would be before the sale. And certainly Best Buy has the legs to be able to basically say is that we'll match any sale whatsoever. And that would make sense. So which one of these would a Walmart, somebody buying a computer from Walmart, be more likely to go to?
What was low cost?
Yeah, I would say the lowest total cost. I would also say this, since you've already got your own IT staff or whatever, you know, this is at Walmart, if you have to bring anything back, one of the great things about Walmart is they have a no questions asked return policy, which is pretty cool. All right. So I'd also say references and credentials, even though you might think that they may not have one, it still would want to be one of those that would be pretty good. Let's say I were a personal consulting corporation with a pretty heavy duty service department and tech support group. Which one of these do you think?
Assistance during it and the credentials.
Yeah, I think those are good ones. And another thing is about the full service relationship. I think when you look at everything that they need in order to support that, I think in terms of organization, that's probably a pretty good one as well, that they might want to tap into. And here's the last thing as well, and this is the other thing that has to be taken into account. It's the percentage of the respondents too. So there's a lot of weight there in this full service relationship, and 61% of the respondents want to be into that level. It would take a pretty good, high-tech, heavy-duty support system to be able to make a substantial amount of money on that particular group. But then again, that's where all the money is. Now, you mentioned this, and I also think this is important for you as well, is that you could combine two of these groups together as well. You could combine the references credentials, or you could combine lowest total cost and responsive support together. You could do different marketing messages for each one of these. And ultimately what you've got is you've got about almost a third of the market just by focusing on two different market segments. The real answer on which one of these groups you're going to want to target, the answer is the one that most matches your corporation. The one that matches the structure that your company can support and support successfully, that's the one you're actually want to go after. And so this is actually kind of it's a really fairly straightforward example. Doesn't take a lot of complicated ideas, but when you look at things like this and you provide them in this way, it gives you a chance to be able to dissect them into smaller and smaller items. It makes it easier for you to understand the overall picture. So what I get out of this is I'm looking at service decided in 4 unique segments. I'm looking at one group that doesn't require any service at all, except they want to make sure that they get the product at the lowest price. You've got another group that does not have a service staff that needs help, and they care nothing about price, which is good. They're the people I'm going to shoot the 20%. Usually the way service contracts work, in-house service, if you have to bring units in, is 12% of the total purchase price, and on-site contracts is 20% of the total purchase price. So if someone buys $10,000 worth of equipment from you, the average rule of thumb is to get 4-hour access is an additional $2,000, and that would get you a service contract. That's generally how it works now. So full service relationship, they want to be able to do everything, and then one that doesn't care at all, which references credentials. So kind of an interesting thing, gives you an idea of how it all balances out. So that's how marketing segmentation works. And it works not with what we sell, but how we sell it. So these are the steps again. Also, remember, you kind of allocate the points across the axis by what are high, medium, and low demand. You identify the segments, you establish their service outputs, and you look for patterns, all right? This is many times what you talk about when you're considering this stuff to be, tend to be an art rather than talking about it to be a science. You have to be able to look at the information and make the information speak to you. Now, the important thing to always understand is that there will always be a trade-off between the price and the service inputs. And different segments want more of different service outputs than others. And one strategy does not fit all segments. And depending on how much time you wish to invest in each of those segments and be able to satisfy them, you can chase one segment or you can chase multiple segments. But it all depends on how it fits your organization. One of the great things about Amazon and their marketplace, Amazon, and I think I've talked about this before, has done very much the same as eBay, except Amazon has taken totally over the service output part. Amazon does everything. So I bought a couple of phones that were not the right phones that I needed. And Amazon negotiated everything with the marketplace supervisor, did everything, including giving me the return on those things. And they do that simply better than anyone else does. And so let me just wrap this up by saying the segments have their own different outputs. One strategy doesn't fit all segments. And that's why you need to know each segment so that you can define a different strategy for each segment. And that price is not the only consideration. So this is kind of a little sheet that you can use and a template, but we don't necessarily need to use that, okay? Just one more thing, and I'm gonna just say it again. The reason that we named this is to make it easy for us to picture our consumers and to help us facilitate talking about them. So whatever you want to use as a way of describing them, give them a name. It makes it easier. Oops, wrong way. So the last thing we're going to talk about is segmentation and talking about the omni-channel. The omni-channel has basically made segmentation that much more difficult. So if any of you in here have a complicated purchase of high risk, many of you probably do what I do, which is called research shopping. So who goes online to look up information about the goods that they're buying? Yeah, everybody does. Yeah, it's a pretty common thing. So when I purchased my automobile, the first major decision I made was to purchase it in the first place. And then I started my research. And I was looking for a given criteria. And then based upon the criteria and the prices that I was looking for, I did what's known as research shopping. And research shopping is when only one channel is used for research, but purchase is made in the other. However, I did all of my shopping, including purchasing, only on a single channel, and that's the omni-channel. My television, however, I did something entirely different. So when I got tenure, my gift to myself was a 75-inch television, which I got permission before my wife saw how big it was. Right. And so the first thing I started doing was doing a lot of research. And we know this is that 40 to 60% of all electronics are bought online, but of that 40 to 60%, 2/3 of individuals will actually go into a store to actually see it with their eyes first. And that's what I did. Okay. So I went inside, I went to a Walmart, I went in the Walmart and looked at the Samsung, the QLED with my own eyes to make sure I got it right. And that's one of the difficulties, is that I use multiple channels to be able to make the same purchase. And that's what we find a lot of consumers doing. Different segments prefer different channels. My father was one of those people who could not ever have used anything other than going to a store, looking it up, and using it. Many other people use email to do their work. I'm one of those individuals that, especially when it comes to service, I refuse to be on the phone. I do online chat or nothing. And it's just quite simply is, I don't want to spend that time holding up onto a phone. It's just simply too much for me. Each one of us, each one of those segments is different. And in order to pursue us properly, you have to understand what each one of those particular groups needs. Now, realize this is that customer segmentation can affect channel segmentation. So what does this mean? You have two things that affect how consumers buy. One of them is brand choice, and the other is brand channel. You will have some consumers who will only buy things that they can buy through a given channel. That's my dad. It doesn't matter if there's a less expensive, better item that he could have pursued online, because he wasn't going to use that channel in the first place. And that's an example. There are other individuals who will buy online and will do delivery, and that's it as well. I got in consumer research, one of the individuals in Dr. Northington's class called me, and he was asking me about how do I go about buying my things. And since the pandemic, you've actually got two things going on. Is I buy online, but I pick up in store. And the big reason why I pick up in store, quite simply, is because 12 million people are no longer working, and I don't want to wait an hour or two to get my goods. I want to go get them myself. And he kind of laughed and said that the IT people that he interviewed, they go online and it's delivered directly to them. Well, that's an example of channel segmentation and how that happens. They will go by that brand channel to their exclusiveness, and that's it. A brand choice means that you will pursue that brand to the ends of the earth, no matter how or what it takes to be able to get that particular item. And so that's what I did with my television. And ultimately, I bought the television from Walmart, but the channel was I wanted it delivered directly to me. And the guy, bless his heart, and I mean that in a good way, when he came to bring me my television, he sympathized with me and actually carried it into my house. So he got a big tip, all right? So the last thing to realize about the omni-channel is that the omni-channel makes it much more difficult to track offline interactions than online ones, because online ones tend to be very convoluted and difficult. Different segments prefer different channels. And so that channels, though you might have a lot of channel pollution in there, it's very difficult to have. But you also have individuals such as myself that do research shopping and make a purchase in another way. And then customer segmentation can affect channel segmentation, that there are those that will buy only through one channel and ignore brands. And there are those who have brands that ignore channels. And so that's the whole thought about the omni-channel system. Okay, I have got an annual review coming up, so I'm letting you out early today. And we will come on Thursday. We'll talk about the omni-channel. Next week, you'll have that week off, and we'll finish up class in 2 weeks, Tuesday week. Have a good time. You're welcome.